Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. Welcome to our webinar, Audit-Ready in Days, How to Automate SAP and App Access Reviews Before Year End. My name is Alexei Milishenko, and I'll be your moderator today. We'll get started just in a minute or two while everyone settles in, so grab a coffee, close a few tabs, and get comfortable. And while we're waiting for a few more folks to join, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Today's session will run about 60 minutes, including a live Q&A at the end. So don't worry about taking tons of notes. We'll send you the recording afterward. And if you have any questions at any point, just drop them in the Q&A panel on the right. We'll get to as many as we can later on. Before we jump in, I'd love to ask a quick favor. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a survey tab. It's just 2 short questions. Your answers really helps us understand what's most relevant for you, what challenges you're running into today, and which use cases or topics you'd like us to focus on in the future webinars. So if you can take a few seconds right now to fill it out, we would really be super grateful. If the panel isn't open, click Survey at the top, choose your answers, and make sure to hit Submit button when you're done. I'll give everyone a quick moment to do that right now. All right, I see some responses coming in. Thank you very much for your contribution. And if you haven't hit submit button yet, it's right below the questions. You might need to scroll down a little bit in the widget. So again, your feedback really helps us make the next sessions even more relevant to your needs. All right. Thank you so much for taking a moment to do that. And now let's get started. I am really excited to introduce today's speaker, Jasmine Chenikera-Varghese, application security subject matter expert and applied research scientist here at Pavlok. Jasmine, she's going to show you how to simplify and automate your access reviews process across SAP and other business applications, so you can be audit ready in days, not weeks. All right, Jasmine, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Chenikera-Varghese. I am from Pathlock, and I have spent more than 15 years working on technology development for network communications, cybersecurity, and application governance. For the past 10 years, I've been involved in shaping strategy and driving innovation to help organizations solve some of their toughest challenges around access governance and application security. So in today's webinar, we're going to tackle a challenge that nearly every organization struggles with at some point: how to manage access risks and control access across critical applications, both SAP applications and non-SAP applications. So user access reviews are important because when done right, they strengthen security, they reduce risk, and they improve operational efficiency. But the typical business application landscape is complex. We're not just dealing with SAP, there are other applications like Salesforce, Oracle, Microsoft. So managing access consistently and running repeatable access reviews becomes harder. That's why today we're going to dive into practical strategies for building a streamlined, unified access review process that covers both SAP and non-SAP applications and gives organizations control and confidence in their enterprise-wide access governance approach. So let's talk about user access reviews. They are usually seen as just another compliance checkbox, but really they are a foundational control for both security and governance. User access reviews is about answering the question, Who has access to what, and should they? Ideally, users should only have enough access to do their jobs and nothing more. But in the real world, access accumulates over time. People change roles, switch departments, projects shift, and there's not always a consistent practice to go back and clean up what's no longer needed. So from a security standpoint, user access reviews are needed to find those unused or excessive access that can become easy targets for insider threats or external attackers who want to compromise accounts. User access reviews are also helpful in spotting orphaned accounts, accounts left behind by ex-employees or unused services, before they become a potential attack surface that exposes the organization. So a couple of drivers, including compliance that's driving user access reviews. We have SOX for ensuring financial controls. We have NIST for guiding cybersecurity frameworks. We have GDPR for personal data and ISO standards for general information security. But what do they all have in common? They require regular user access reviews to ensure that sensitive data is only accessible to authorized individuals. So at the center of all these frameworks and regulations is a simple principle: least privileged access. This means users should only have the access they really need to do their jobs and nothing more. And that's what user access reviews are designed to enforce. So when user access reviews are done well, it will build trust with your customers and with your partners because it shows that you're serious about protecting their sensitive information. Another key driver for access reviews is visibility. Access reviews give both IT teams and business owners a clear picture of who has access to what. They enforce accountability across the organization. So reviews give them a chance to take pause, take inventory, and ask questions like, do the users still need this access? Does their current job or position justify that access? So it'll help ensure that the access that the reviewers are given actually aligns with your internal policies and business priorities. So far we've talked about user access reviews in a general sense. And in most organizations, user access reviews are happening. Definitely in the SAP landscape, it is happening because it makes sense because SAP is a high-risk business critical application integrated into finance and operations, and it's a core system auditors usually look at. But the access you give out is more than just for SAP. SAP is just one part of a much broader application landscape. So organizations use SAP for their core ERP system, and they'll integrate with other applications to fill in gaps, to optimize performance, or to meet evolving or other business requirements. So most enterprises today will run a complex ecosystem of applications. They'll have Salesforce, they'll have Workday, SuccessFactors, Microsoft Entra, Ariba, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards. And each of these applications can have sensitive data and can have privileged access. So they are also a potential for compliance exposure. Each of these different applications are probably running their own user access reviews, but in a siloed way. So they may be running it at different frequencies or with different review processes. And this is where it becomes more challenging. So when we talk about different SAP and non-SAP applications, the challenge is not that the applications are siloed. The real challenge is that the process of reviewing access and managing access governance is fragmented. So think about it. Employees have multiple accounts across different applications, and each of those applications comes with its own security model, with multiple layers of permissions, even within the same system. So that makes it hard to run a consistent, repeatable access review process across that enterprise landscape. So when you're working with siloed applications, there will be some inefficiency and inconsistency in the review process. In some systems, you may be lucky enough to have automated user access reviews with built-in tools that streamline the whole process. But in older applications, it could be completely manual. IT admins have to go in and extract user and access data, dump that information into spreadsheets. So there's large volumes of data that need to be correlated to the right identities and then mapped and sent to the right approvers or reviewers. So this could take days, even weeks. So once they send it off to the reviewers by email, they have to chase their reviewers down, they have to get their approvals, send reminders. And by that time, may have missed your deadlines and you will have inconsistent follow through in completing those reviews. Now, for the reviewers, there's not enough visibility in the single application or across applications to help them make effective decisions to keep or revoke access. So they end up approving reviews without really understanding the access or the risk associated with it. Because at that point, it's more about clearing their workload than conducting a meaningful review. And we have seen real world cases where it takes 2 to 3 months to complete the review of a single application instance. By the time it's done, the access snapshot they were using and certifying against may have already been outdated. So it takes so much effort to complete user access review campaigns that they are often run less frequently. So that leaves the organization vulnerable between those audit periods as you keep the excessive or obsolete access with the users. And so the organization will stay exposed to access risks, especially cross-app access risks. So for example, let's say a user has access to Workday and SAP ERP. So the user has HR admin access in Workday, so they can hire employees, change salaries, levels, trigger payroll runs. And then on the SAP side, they have access to finance and payroll access. So they can post payroll journal entries, they can release payments. So the risk here is that this user can create a fake employee, inflate salaries in Workday, and then approve and execute the payments in SAP. So now you have a fraudulent or erroneous payroll payments that are happening, and there is no oversight for it because there's no analysis of the cross-application risk that could be occurring. So when applications are siloed, compliance gaps are usually created as well, because provisioning may be done outside of compliant processes. So for example, maybe IT is going in and assigning access to technical roles directly to users without going through an approval process. Then you may end up having a finance user who somehow has admin level access in a non-finance system. So this kind of over-provisioned, non-compliant access gets missed in siloed reviews. And auditors don't just want to see that reviews have happened. They want proof that these reviews were meaningful and effective. So without context, without a centralized audit trail, and with the fragmented data scattered across different applications, it's hard to show that in a cohesive way. And as your organization scales, you get more users, you get more applications, this compliance problem only gets worse. So what might have worked for 5 systems or 5 applications, individually, you could have run user access reviews, but it's not going to work when you're managing 10, 20, 50, 100 systems and need to go through the same process. Some applications will fall through the cracks, or if the reviews are done, they're done so infrequently that they're not really meeting compliance standards. If the review applications are being reviewed, reviewers may also be facing long lists of review items and access and system roles to look at. They have tight deadlines to deal with and have little context. So they end up delaying their review tasks, and they may just rubber stamp approvals just to move on and get it off their plate. So the challenge of siloed user access reviews can't be solved by just running those access reviews in parallel across the different applications. So you could schedule reviews to run across the different systems to coincide, but they're still happening in isolation using different tools, using different processes, and even different data formats. So you're still left with the same problem, same core problem of siloed governance. And because access risks don't live in one system, they're distributed across the entire application landscape, we need to think about access governance across the landscape as well. So what we need to do is shift from application-specific reviews to enterprise-wide visibility and control. This means expanding our user access certification programs and also our access governance to include non-SAP systems and SAP systems, but with a centralized enterprise approach. And when we do this, we can establish a single source of truth for identities and access, And we can apply consistent access policies and review processes across the different applications. So how do we get to enterprise-wide access governance? The first step is understanding where we are today. That means taking inventory of all the identity stores of your systems, of your applications across the landscape. We also want to identify how access is currently managed and by whom. We need to document the pain points as well. Is there manual provisioning? Is there manual access reviews? Are there inconsistent access policies? Is there lack of visibility? Are there any other audit challenges? So this will all expose the silos and the gaps and help us prioritize which process needs to be tackled first. So next we define what enterprise access management looks like for us. What will be our source of truth for identity? And this is typically one of your HR systems or multiple HR systems. By pulling in the HR data, we can establish a correlation between the user accounts in those business critical applications with actual employee or non-employee identities within your corporate environment. Then we need to think about what are our global access policies and standards, and is there any localizations to these policies required for different regions or different departments? How do we handle joiner, leaver, mover scenarios? What roles and entitlements do we want standardized across the organization? So once we've defined our model, we can start aligning application access with the governance model. So we start by integrating access and identity from our core systems into a single place for centralized visibility. Then we can focus on the quick wins. We can pick the applications with the highest impact or highest risk. So maybe we start with all our SAP applications, or maybe all our ERP applications. And then we expand out in phases, ensuring as we bring each application on board, that they're brought in within our access governance model and it's aligned with the central policies we've put in place. So now that application access is integrated, we have the opportunity to centralize how access is defined and enforced. So instead of relying on ad hoc assignments outside compliant provisioning processes or using system-specific roles or technical roles within applications, we can start defining enterprise-wide roles and permission policies. And we can base those enterprise-wide roles on job function, department, risk level. So think of it as building a standard role catalog that aligns access consistently across the organization. And again, it's not just about SAP. These are enterprise or business roles that span both SAP and non-SAP applications. So what are the benefits here? It is a much more structured and consistent way to manage access. So that means less administrative overhead, faster, simpler onboarding and offboarding, easier access reviews, and reduced access creep. So of course, we can't do this overnight. So the best approach will be a phased one, where you start identifying those high impact technical roles, collect them into an enterprise or business role, test them, refine them, and then expand into other roles and add them into different enterprise roles. And that way we're guiding a controlled evolution to a more mature, standardized access model. So once we have integration in place, now we can run those enterprise-wide unified access reviews. This means we're reviewing access across multiple applications from one place with a single interface. And we'll dive deeper into how the UAR or the user access review process matures in a few more slides. But I do want to mention that this is not a set it and forget it type of process. So mature enterprise access management is really built on continuous improvement. This means you want to monitor your review completion rates. You want to monitor for those orphaned accounts. You want to monitor for unremediated SOD violations and make sure you're continuously improving those numbers. You want to expand your governance to cover new applications and evolving business models. You want to regularly update your policies and definitions of your different enterprise roles and your risks as regulations change. So it's an ongoing cycle that's needed to ensure that access governance always stays effective and relevant. So transforming from a siloed application approach to a enterprise-wide process has several benefits. Your audit readiness is improved because you're replacing fragmented, inconsistent access control processes with a centralized framework. So it's easier for you to demonstrate compliance. You can go through the detailed logs, you can show audit trails. So you have a fast and easy way to produce evidence that auditors require. You're also finding those hidden cross-application access risks when you're looking enterprise-wide. So now you'll see the SOD conflicts between SAP, Workday, Salesforce, and you can see the inactive users with active privileges. You can see the inconsistent access policies across systems, so you can proactively move to a least privilege access approach. With enterprise-wide access governance, process efficiency also improves. Instead of reviewing access separately for each application, for each SAP application, for each Workday application, and so forth, enterprise governance lets you do it in a single centralized interface. So reviewers themselves don't have to log into different systems or decipher different role names and chase data manually. So this saves them time, reduces any errors, and also prevents them from feeling overloaded. And also allows your organization to grow. So whether you're adding more users, more systems, more locations, you can do that without adding complexity or operational burden. So one big benefit is the faster onboarding and offboarding. So instead of waiting for days for approvals, let's say, a new hire can get their access, birthright access at least, to their 5 core systems very quickly. This also plays a huge role when we think about S/4HANA migrations. So you don't want to carry over outdated or risky access from your legacy SAP ECC systems. So with enterprise access governance, you can review and identify those unused roles, those SOD risks, those over-provisioned users before you do the migration. That way, you're only migrating what you really need. So you're reducing both your risk and your complexity as you move to S/4HANA. So once we've moved to access management from siloed systems to a centralized model, the next step really is to rethink how we review that access. So the traditional blanket reviews done once or twice a year tend to overwhelm reviewers and usually dilutes the focus of the review. So we want to shift to a smarter, risk-aware review process. That means we want to replace the ad hoc reviews with scheduled review campaigns. So we want to run these access review campaigns quarterly, twice a year, or aligned with whatever your audit cycle is. So having a predictable cadence ensures reviews actually happen, that they start getting completed on time, and that they get the right level of attention. And the benefits here is that it creates consistency, it drives accountability, and it eliminates those last-minute scrambles that could happen right before an audit. And most importantly, it reinforces the message that user access reviews isn't just a one-off task. They should be part of everyday business. Now, not all access is created equal. That's why a key step in maturing the user access review process is to move toward risk-based prioritization. Instead of treating every access review item the same, we want to focus more time and scrutiny on the high-risk, high-impact access. So users with permissions to critical systems or sensitive data. So we can focus on those users. Meanwhile, routine low-risk access, birthright access, can be reviewed less frequently with a lighter touch. So this shift ensures we're focusing our efforts where they really matter. We're not wasting cycles reviewing read-only access in a basic tool while overlooking someone with admin rights in the financial systems. So by incorporating the risk criteria, like data sensitivity, system criticality, user privilege levels, we can tailor our review process to better protect the business. So then it becomes not just about checking boxes, we're now aligning reviews to real world risk. So we're improving our security posture, and we're also making every reviewer's time count because they're focused on what they really need to review. So we've talked about moving from system or technical roles to enterprise roles to simplify access governance. And this is true when you consider access reviews as well. Instead of managers reviewing dozens or even hundreds of individual user permissions or technical roles, we can assign access to the predefined business or enterprise roles that actually reflect the job functions. So maybe you have an enterprise role called finance analyst or HR manager that gives them the right technical roles in the different applications. So this elevates the conversation for the reviewers. The reviewers can now focus on the business context, the organizational changes, the team structure, the evolving responsibilities, instead of digging through the technical details like transaction codes or obscure permissions that are associated with the technical role. So now, instead of overwhelming reviewers with complexity, we give them access to data that's streamlined. So it's cleaner, it's more consistent, and it starts aligning with the real job responsibilities. So we're not burning out the reviewers. So just showing the reviewers a list of the business or enterprise roles or technical roles isn't enough. If we want access reviews to be effective, we need to give reviewers context. We need to give them real insights. Is the user actually using this access? How does their access compare to their peers? Is this access tied to sensitive data or segregation of duties or SOD risks? So by integrating these analytics, the reviews become smarter. The reviewers become smarter. We're not solely relying on the role names and descriptions, but we're using real world insights to guide decisions. And the goal here is to make those access reviews meaningful, defensible, and actually impactful. So when an auditor asks, why was this approved? We can give a clear answer. It was approved because all their peers have the same role or access, and they use that access more than 70% usage on that access. So now we have a clear answer to give to auditors of why we decided to keep that access for the user. So as the user access review process matures, we don't have to wait until the next quarterly review to catch risky access. So with an evolved approach, reviews can be triggered whenever something changes, like when a user switches a department, takes on a new position, leaves a project. So those are the moments when access is actually likely to become obsolete or excessive. So that's exactly when we want to act. So by kicking off reviews at these key transition points, we can make sure that roles and permissions are reevaluated in near real time. So this helps prevent privilege creep and aligns access with the business needs and cleans up the outdated roles before they become an actual risk. So it's a smarter, more effective approach by doing these event-triggered user access reviews rather than waiting for the next review cycle to catch up and find those risks. So another way to strengthen the access review process is to include corrective actions. Because just identifying the obsolete or incorrect access isn't enough. We need to act on it quickly and consistently. So whether we decide that when access is not appropriate, do we lock the user account? Do we deprovision the role? Do we remove the risk or remediate the risk? Do we remove unused access? These actions can be part of the review workflow or the review process. In this way, we're closing the loop. We're ensuring that the decisions we made during the review actually result in real world changes. So it takes access reviews from a passive exercise into an active control. So we can make sure access stays aligned with whatever our internal policies are. So now that we understand the value of moving to a centralized enterprise-wide approach and the benefits that come with maturing your access review processes, the question is, how can we do it well? So even with the right tools in place, if the process isn't designed thoughtfully, we can still run the risk of ineffective reviews, of rubber stamping, missed risks, or even reviewer overload in the organization. So that's why it's important to move beyond just doing reviews, but focus on how we can make them better. So here we're going to take a look at some strategies that help user access reviews become more effective in strengthening the security posture, in improving compliance outcomes, and making life easier for both the reviewers and the administrators. So we recommend templatizing review campaigns. So we want to create reusable templates for campaigns, whether it's for by business unit, by application type, or risk profile. You want to standardize the process and eliminate a lot of the manual overhead. So you can predefine the scope of your access review campaign. You can predefine which users and which roles should be reviewed as part of that campaign. You can also predefine the reviewer assignment rules and define the number of review stages you want. So this means you're not starting from scratch every single time you run a access review campaign. So it saves time, it reduces errors, and ensures that every review follows the same rules and structure and has the same level of scrutiny. So you're building a process that can scale as your environment grows and becomes more complex. So it's a repeatable process that ensures that there's consistency also across your teams, your regions, and your applications. So you can move away from one-off campaigns that you have to configure from scratch to a more efficient, mature policy-driven process that's ready for audits and for business expansion. Another best practice that could make a difference is to consolidate your access review campaigns. So instead of launching separate disconnected reviews for each application or for a specific department, look for opportunities to centralize them under a single campaign. So we want to give reviewers a unified view of access across systems and applications and reduce duplication. We also want to uncover those cross-system risks that can go unnoticed when the reviews happen separately. So for example, think about your finance team. They're probably using SAP ERP, Workday, and maybe even some other tools, maybe even some legacy or custom tools. So rather than reviewing each application separately, you can group them into a single campaign. Let's call it Finance and ERP Access Review Campaign. And in that campaign, you've scoped the same users, and so you can evaluate them against the same or consistent review criteria. So typically you want to group your applications in a UAR campaign that are used by the same user population or are used by this to support the same business function or have similar review criteria or rules. So it's really all about making reviews easier to manage, more actionable, and more aligned with how your business works. So you can also transform access reviews from a burden into a business asset. And you do this by automation. Automate the whole process. Automate pulling access and user data. Automate correlating employees to the application user accounts. Use rules to automatically assign reviewers based on the roles, on applications, on the department, on the business units. That way, the right people are always in the loop, so there's no manual guesswork, no gaps, and no missed assignments. Set up smart transitions and automated notifications to drive accountability. So when a review is assigned, the reviewer gets notified. If they miss the deadline, they get a reminder. If it's still not done, maybe you automatically escalate that review to someone else, or you automatically revoke the access. And it's not just stopping at the reviews and collecting the decisions. You also want to automate the corrective actions, the deprovisioning of the role, triggering a recertification, launching further investigations, locking an account. All that should be done without any manual intervention. So this is how you move from being a reactive process to being more proactive, from chasing down spreadsheets to running a streamlined, policy-driven, and audit-ready process on autopilot, actually. So another smart strategy is to give your reviewers useful insights and analytics. You don't want to just hand them a list of role names and descriptions and expect them to make the right call. So give them the insights. Is the user actually using this access? When did they last log in? How is their access compared to peers in the same position or even in the same department? What is the assigned risk levels of those roles or entitlements or permissions? Are there any risk violations that result from the access? So when you layer in this kind of information about risk, usage, data, peer analytics, reviewers can start spotting overprivileged users, outdated access, and risky users much more easily. So you can transform your access reviews from being a box checking exercise into true governance. So you're going to reduce rubber stamping and you're going to empower reviewers with the information they need to actually do make the decisions and make good decisions. So as you're doing these user access reviews, you want to have a complete defensible audit trail that's always ready to share as evidence. Because it's not just about proving the reviews have happened, it's really about full visibility into how the decisions were made and why. So from the moment an access review campaign is created, its scope, configuration, reviewer assignments, everything should be tracked. Every access decision, whether it's to approve or reject the access, should be logged, along with who took that action and when. If the review gets escalated, if it gets reassigned, or if it gets handled automatically after a deadline, all that should be captured in the audit trails as well. Because you also want to make that reporting of that information easy and consistent. So you also want to use standardized report templates and schedule automated updates to the stakeholders so they're not always chasing down information on the progress of the campaigns or the status of the decisions. You also want to report that reconciles the review decisions that were made with the actual access changes to confirm the right actions were taken. So if you did reject a row, you expect that to be deprovisioned in the target application. So when you go to this reconciliation report, you can confirm that that has happened. So this level of traceability keeps you audit ready at all times, and it builds trust in the whole access governance process. So now let's take a look at what access reviews look like in action with Pathlock Cloud. And this is where we get full visibility into an employee's access landscape, not just across SAP, but across those non-SAP systems as well, along with the risk tied to that access. And so this gives us a complete, unified, risk-aware view that makes reviews go faster and become more effective. So let's start by looking at the employee profiles. And this is where everything comes together and we have a unified view about all the employees. So I have information about employee access, and their access can be spanning SAP, non-SAP systems. And we can also see at the employee level what risks are associated with that access. So this is a unified view across all applications, and it's powered by extracting the access data from the target applications, from those business applications, and correlating it with the identity data that is being extracted from the HR systems. So here we see that there are a number of applications that employees have access to or have accounts in, and we can see a risk level associated with each of those employee identities. So what's really powerful here is that we have a lot of clarity. We don't have to piece information manually from different tools. I can see everything in one place. So that means as a reviewer, I'm going to be able to make faster reviews, smarter decisions, and be able to take immediate action based on my decisions. So let's look at Carol Frazier's profile, which is the third one down here in the grid, because she's flagged as a high risk level and she has access to 6 systems. So let's drill down and look at her specific profile. So for Carol Frazier, this employee profile gives me a 360-degree view of her access and her risk posture. In this first tab, you see key details about Carol, her name, her title, her employee ID, hiring date, email. We also capture organizational context, so her direct manager, her department, her company. So having all this information will help understand who this user is, where they sit in the organization, and you don't have to jump between systems to get this information or request this from your IT or your admins. So for Carol as well, let's look at the users tab, and this shows us all the accounts she has in the different applications. So we see accounts in the different applications like SAP, Oracle, JD Edwards, Salesforce, and others. And we also see the user account names that's associated in each of those applications. So this gives us a centralized visibility into everything she can access. And we also see, if we look down here on Salesforce, that the employee name is, employee we're looking at is Carol, but it's not matching the account owner name, which shows as Ashish. So this could be one of the reasons Carol has been flagged as a high risk. So now if we go into the roles view in this employee profile, we'll get a complete list of all the technical roles assigned to Carol through her different user accounts across those different applications. So across SAP, Oracle, and all the other connected systems. So here we see the role name, the role type, the system the role is from, and the user account that has access to that role. And remember, each of these applications can have different security models. And so we can see that in the role type. So in SAP, we'll have roles and profiles. In Oracle, we'll have responsibilities. In JD Edwards, it'll be user auths. So Pathlock takes the access data from all these different applications and normalizes it into role and role type. So the admins and the reviewers can have a consistent understanding of access, no matter which application they're looking at through Pathlock. So this is bringing all that scattered access data together and normalized into one place. So from the employee profile view, we can also see all the access risks that are involved with this user. So we get an idea of all the risk violations that are here. So we see that there are quite a few here. And the second one here is a segregation of duties, or SOD conflict, where the user can enter a journal and also post it. So this is classified as a high-risk SOD, because it's opens doors to potential fraud or misuse of access. But we're not just flagging that there's an issue here. We're providing some additional description that explains why this matters, so that when you're looking at this risk, you can take the right action, whether it's to put in mitigating controls or to remove the risky access. Then we can also see a complete list of requests tied to this employee, tied to Carol. This isn't just a static log, but it's a record of all the workflows that have been triggered around and is related to requests for modifying access or getting new access into different applications. So this will include provisioning workflows for new access requests and automated provisioning even. It will include elevated access workflows when you want temporary time-bound access to be granted for very privileged emergency or firefighter type accesses. We also have other governance workflows in here too for remediation steps for risks. So having all these different types of requests and workflows in one place makes it easier to understand what access was given, when it was requested, how it was governed and approved, all this without going into different systems to get that information. So now that we've taken a look at the employee profile, let's talk about using that information to run a user access review campaign. So the campaign allows us to run structured, repeatable reviews for the entire departments, for selected enterprise roles, for production systems, all while making sure we're consistent and accountable and still compliant. So I have the ability here to create a user access review campaign based on specific configurations that align with the organization's policies and compliance requirements. So this means I can focus the scope of the campaign. So for instance, I can filter the identities or the accounts that should be included in this review campaign. Maybe I want to target all the employees. Maybe I just want to include the contractors. Maybe I just want to consider service accounts. Or maybe I just want to include identities for a specific department or a specific region. I can also focus the campaign on specific roles. So maybe I only want to review access for users who have critical roles like admins or developers or finance managers. Or I want to consider roles that are associated with a specific business process. Maybe I want to review all the roles that are linked to a business process like general accounting. So I have the flexibility to do that here. I can also filter by systems or applications. So if the review campaign is only for high risk or sensitive systems like financial platforms, or maybe it's only for HR systems, or maybe it's only for production environments, I can limit the campaign to just look at those systems. So this level of granularity gives us greater control to make sure that the reviews that we send out to the reviewers are actually meaningful, and it'll also help reduce the reviewer overload that comes when you don't have a when you have a broader or less targeted campaign. So as I start building out this campaign, I can set the scheduling frequency. So I can consider this campaign that I've configured and scoped out as a template campaign. So I can schedule the frequency. It could be a one-time campaign, or I can have it run quarterly, monthly, or whatever cadence to align with the audit requirements. And then I can select the workflow that governs how the review process will operate. So the workflow defines key rules, like key transition rules, like who gets assigned the reviews automatically. For example, maybe we design the workflow so that the user's direct manager has to do the review, or maybe it's the application's role owner that have to do the review. We can also define how many review stages are needed. So maybe we have a two-stage review where in the first stage, the user manager has to review it. And in the second stage, the role owner has to review it. And this is often done when you want an extra layer of review, especially on sensitive access roles. The workflow will also handle other operational details. So we can set up automated reminder emails to keep reviewers on track. We can set up escalation rules. So if a review is overdue, we can escalate it to another group, or we can auto close it and remove the access, all depending on the policy that's been configured. So this kind of automation also helps keep the review process moving with limited manual intervention. So we've talked about how campaigns are created. So let's talk about how Pathlock makes life easier for the reviewers. So here I'm coming in as a reviewer, and I have a clean interface, intuitive interface to help me evaluate the access for each employee that I have to review. So I can choose how I want to work. I can group the reviews by system, or I can focus on a specific employee, or I can focus on a specific role and start doing my reviews that way. So right from the main grid, I can see the key details I may need to make a decision quickly. What system the user has access to, what roles are assigned, any descriptions that provide context about that role. This means I'm not going through multiple screens trying to get to this information. I have it right here if I'm able to make a quick, informed decision. But usually those access decisions are not always black and white. We may need more context to make the right call. So from that individual review item, we can go into a screen that gives us additional analytics. So I can see more information about the employee that I'm reviewing, their department, their job title, their location. So this is all the employee profile information that helps me determine whether the access I'm looking at actually aligns with their responsibilities. So for example, if someone in the finance department shows up in the review with admin rights and Active Directory, that should raise a red flag. I can also get role details about the information about the access I'm reviewing for this specific identity for Carol Fraser. So in this case, it's a composite role. So I can drill down into the child roles this composite role has, and this gives me a more comprehensive picture of the actual access this role is going to provide, and helps me make a better, more informed decision. But I'm not limited to just employee and role details. I also get additional insights. So for example, I can see usage information. So this tells me whether the user is actively using the access they've been assigned, or if it's just sitting unused. And if it's unused, maybe that's the opportunity to remove that role to clean up access. I can also see immediately if any of the underlying activities or entitlements for that role is flagged as high risk. If they are high risk and they're sitting unused, that gives me more of an indication that maybe this role should not be assigned to the identity and I need to remove it. So it's giving me more context to help guide my decisions. I can also get risk insights. So I can see that for this, for Carol, for this identity and the role we're reviewing, if it's flagged for any sensitive access or if it's tied to any risk violations. And this is really helpful because I can identify which role combinations are contributing to the risk. Um, so I don't just know the risk exists, but I can see why it exists and I can determine which role needs to be removed to mitigate or remediate the risk. We can also look at historical information and peer analytics. So if we go and look at the prior review outcomes, I can go and look and see in the previous certification if this review item was already approved. And if I notice that these roles are being consistently approved without any changes, then this could be a candidate for certification automation, or these roles can at least be flagged as low risk. So the next time we come around to review it, we can make those decisions quicker. I can also see how this role was provisioned. Was it assigned through a compliant automated workflow with approvals, or was it done manually? So in this case, it looks like it was manually provisioned because there's no information, or there is information about the provisioning history. If there was no information, it was most likely manually provisioned. And in that case, manual provisions tend to be more error prone. So this one would have been a good candidate for stricter review on if this role is really needed for that user, especially if it didn't go through a compliant approval process. I'm also getting peer analytics. So on the right panel, I have peer analytics where I can compare this user's access to others in the same position or with the same manager. So if their access looks out of line with their peers, that's a signal to take a closer look. So if Carol has this role and no other peers have the same role, then it might be considered an anomaly and maybe it's a role that needs to be removed. So all these insights, the certification history, the provisioning history, and the peer comparisons are surfaced right away with this review items. So I can make those review decisions faster and more effective. So everything we walked through so far leads to this, transforming how access is governed, how user access is governed. So by centralizing processes, integrating systems, automating reviews, you unlock benefits that go far beyond compliance. First, you're establishing a unified access management strategy. And in today's complex environment, you need one approach that can span all applications, your SAP ERP, S/4HANA, Ariba, Salesforce, JD Edwards, Microsoft, all these applications and platforms. So aligning roles and access across the enterprise will help you ensure consistency and scalability as the business grows. Second, you're moving from siloed to unified access reviews. So no more fragmented system by system reviews. Instead, you'll have a cohesive, centralized process that reduces manual work. Third, you improve your risk posture. So with cross-application visibility, you can catch those risks that would have been invisible in a siloed review, and it's going to help you move toward a zero risk model. And finally, you're streamlining your operations. So by automating reviews, centralizing and standardizing access to those enterprise roles, you cut down on administrative overhead, you free up your teams to focus on higher value work. So you're supporting efficiency today, and you're supporting scalability for tomorrow. So with Pathlock, enterprise access governance becomes a simpler, stronger, and more scalable solution because we have connectors to SAP and non-SAP applications. So you can break down those silos that you have and manage access through a single pane of glass. We enable compliance, centric identity and access governance. So this means there's one centralized portal for compliant provisioning. There's unified access reviews with automated follow-ups, and there's strong audit and reporting capabilities to take the complexity out of compliance. We also help you enforce control effectiveness with automation. So again, compliance is not just a checkbox. It should be built into daily operations, and we'll help you with that. So the Pathlock impact is very real. We have seen 70% reduction in compliance costs. We've seen 80% reduction in risk and 50% reduction on the IT workload. So Pathlock really helps organizations move faster, stay secure, and be audit ready at all times. So whether you're just starting your governance journey or you're ready to take it to the next level, Pathlock meets you where you are and helps you move towards the future with confidence. Okay, and that wraps up my session for today. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Yeah, first of all, Jasmine, thank you so much for walking us through those best practices. And all right, everyone, now it's time for a Q&A. I see quite a few great questions coming in, so please keep them coming. And I'm going to start pulling a few of them up on screen so everyone can follow along. Just give me a moment, please. All right. Here's the first question. It's a really good one. We are already running periodic access reviews using SAP Jersey. How does Pavlov complement or differ from what we're doing today? Is this a replacement or an add-on? Great question, Jasmine. I'll let you take that one.
So we are not replacing, we're going to complement what you're already doing SAP GRC. So in SAP GRC, you're probably covering all your SAP applications, and we can follow the same process for reviews for other applications that are not SAP, for Oracle, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, Microsoft, so that you have access reviews as a whole is done in a consistent manner. So with Pathlock, you'll be able to align the governance that you're already doing for your SAP systems to your multi-app environments.
Okay. Our next question, and I really love how specific this one is. So, can you share a concrete example of an event-triggered access review in SAP? And what was the trigger and how was it technically implemented? Jasmine, over to you again.
Okay, so event-triggered access reviews would typically happen when there's a change in the HR context for a identity. So let's say Carol, we were talking about Carol before, she moves from sales to finance. She changes departments from sales to finance. So they'll probably get assigned their finance related roles very quickly so they can start working. But their sales roles may still be there. They haven't been removed. So with event triggered user access reviews, when we see that HR change happen, because Pathlock is pulling HR records periodically, we'll detect that change happening and then trigger a user access review to occur so that we can quickly remove those outdated roles that have been assigned to Carol.
Okay. And here's another great one, especially relevant for hybrid environments. There you go. In environments where SAP users also have access to non-SAP systems like Workday or Salesforce, how do you handle identity correlation across systems that do not share a common user ID? Jasmine?
Okay, so every user account should be linked to an identity, and that identity is defined by the HR system. So if we have an HR system, it could be SAP, could be our HR source. From that HR source, we're going to be pulling in identity information, and we'll have to have a correlation point for that identity to the application accounts in Workday or those other applications you have. So that correlation point can be an email address, It can be employee ID, it can be the user ID, and it can be different for each application you have connecting. So as long as you have the identity information integrated, we can pick any the parameter from that or any field in that HR content to be the correlation point, the email address, and so forth, as long as we have that matching correlation value in the target application.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine, and thanks to everyone who sent in questions. If we did not get to yours today, we will make sure to follow up after the session. And that wraps up our webinar for today. And thanks again for joining us and for sharing your feedback and questions. We really appreciate it. You will receive the recording and additional resources shortly after the session. And just a quick note, that survey that I mentioned earlier will also pop up automatically once the webinar ends. So please take a few seconds to complete it there as well. It's the same 2 quick questions, and your input really helps us make our upcoming webinars even more relevant and useful for you. So on behalf of Half Luck and our speaker, Jasmine, thank you for spending this hour with us, and have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you at the next webinar. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.